Hello everybody, this is Alison Hale and we're on webinar 1 of the 3 webinars that I offered you on coaching in ELT. So this is what I'm planning to cover today. I think the focus really is, if I'm going to be more specific, it's about adding coaching to your teaching. You're all teaching already, and I want to show you some ideas about adding coaching to the teaching that you're doing already. So to start off, we'll have a few introductions and give you some background, and then just remind you of the other webinars in this series. And I am planning to make this webinar slightly shorter than at first advertised, because I had said 60 minutes, but I realised at the end of the day that 30 to 45 minutes is going to be better. Can you all hear me okay? You can indicate in your text box whether you can or not, although I have to say I can't see that text box at the moment. But if you write in the text box, it's probably on the right hand side of your screen. You can also write questions in there. So is everybody hearing me all right? I can't see any answers, so I presume that means you can all hear me. So I'll
end up from Carol, so that's fine. Yes, yeah. Can hear loud and clear from Carol. Hello, Alison. I can hear from Eccles.
Oh, good. That's all right then. So where was I? Okay, so adding coaching to your teaching. Well, some introductions. We've got people from all over the world here. We've got some from Croatia, we've got some from France, we've got some from the UK, and so all over the place. And for those of you who don't know me very well, because I did also say in my invitation that you can bring your colleagues and friends to this, I'm going to give just a little bit of background about why I want to talk about this, and also what background I've got in coaching, which should make you feel that you want to listen to me. So I started off as an English language teacher many years ago now, and I have been in the communications industry for 30 years plus. So when I started off my career, it was in ELT. I did general English, but I was already teaching, like you probably, some business people in the classroom. So there might be a mix of a few business people, a few people in their 20s, and a complete mix, and it was general English. At a certain point I started to specialize in business English, and I got very interested in that area. I found that the students, if I call them students, they weren't students, most of them were in work, professional people. I found them much more motivated, much more focused, and because the courses were shorter, they really needed to get more done in a short time, and I found this very, very motivating for me. And I also found that I could use my experience to give them courses that they found really useful. So that, of course, I then got the reaction of very positive reactions from the students. And then about 10 years ago, I discovered coaching, and I found it very useful for me personally. At the time, I was trying to make decisions about the way my work should go, and I found I was just going around in circles on my own and talking to my friends. And when I worked with a coach, I found it was very much easier to make to get clarity and make good decisions for next steps. And in fact, I went on several courses, one-day courses on how to coach, but they were just one-day things, and really what I was interested in using it for myself, not using it for my teaching. But I gradually got more and more interested and finally decided to take a qualification. And I've now got 3 qualifications. The most recent one is an advanced diploma in coaching. And I'm doing no more English teaching now. I gave up doing that about 6-7 years ago, and I'm doing entirely coaching skills training for managers and professionals and executive coaching around issues of communication, but also executive coaching around leadership development. So that's what's happened to my career. So you can see that I've got I've got quite a solid, robust background in coaching now, and knowledge of the ELT, business English careers that I think you're in. I also, along the way, thought that it might be good to be an intercultural trainer, so I took various courses in that area, and so I have got that in my back pocket, as it were, but it's never something that I've specialised in. And for those of you who don't know me, I have worked abroad. My first job was in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. My second job was in Slovenia for a year, and then Croatia for a year. I then was in Egypt with my husband, teaching English for 2 years in Cairo. So Tahrir Square, which we're seeing on the news all the time, is a place where we used to go to get our visas stamped. And then finally we were 6 years in Singapore, where I was working in business English. I also worked at the university, and that was a very high-powered and interesting place to be. So that's given you more of a background to me and why I'm really keen on this subject of English and ELT. And the reason that it was the catalyst for these webinars and for me getting back into talking to teachers about this was because I discovered that some local language schools and other language schools, and I know of one in Ireland, I know of somebody in France, where business English teachers or organizations, or just ELT organizations, are now talking about what they do as coaching. The one-to-one close work that they do together, they're calling it coaching. And so I thought, well, now that I am a qualified coach and teaching coaching skills to people, and because I've got this language school background, I think I would be a good person to explain to people who don't know that there is now a very precise difference between coaching and teaching, and that we should make that clear. However, I do think there are opportunities to add coaching to your teaching, and that is why I'm here today. So that's introductions, that's background, and this is going to be one of 3 free webinars, which I hope will all be useful for you. And I would be very grateful if you would email me afterwards and tell me if it was useful or not, and what you would like in the next ones, any questions that you would like answered in the next webinar, which will be all about frequently asked questions. And tell me give me your honest feedback about what you liked and what you suggest that I put in the next ones. Okay, well, just on to a bit of clarity here then. What is coaching anyway? Well, I've put some ideas about teaching on the left of this slide, and some ideas about coaching on the right. And of course, I've had to be pretty minimalist here, because we could spend some time on definitions and we don't want to. But for those of you who aren't clear because you haven't been to one of my talks where I do give a definition, teaching is, well, if we think of task-based teaching, you would give a task, then you would give some feedback, and then you would give some input on how it could be done better. Then you do another task, then there'd be feedback. So something like that. PPP, the ancient practice that still probably works pretty well in some context. You present something, you practice it, and my goodness, I can't remember what the final P was, but I'm sure you remember. You perform it, maybe. And other types of teaching, you might start with asking questions and then giving some answers and some input. Then you might add some extra input of some kind, and then you might do some exercises. So those might be three different ways that we could say teaching in language, in ELT, business English, or intercultural training as well. You might have one of those kind of frameworks for your lesson. On the other hand, with coaching, we're not looking at those kind of focus at all. We're not looking at tasks. We're not looking at information that you put in. We're looking at encouraging awareness, responsibility, and accountability in the coachee, in the learner, if you like. And we're also encouraging deep thinking, time for reflection, and creative thinking. So there's a lot about thinking in there, and also awareness, responsibility, and accountability. So you can see that the focus is completely different there. And here's the definition that I used recently in a talk that I was giving. So coaching is a structured conversation and a rigorous process. It's to develop the individual professionally and personally. This conversation optimizes potential in work and in life, and that's one of its purposes. It's to maximize performance, and this process acts as a catalyst to creative thinking, to new opportunities, and to inspiring results. So we say structured because it is a process, but there is some structure to it, especially when you first learn it. And it's rigorous in the sense that it's not just about having a nice chat about something. It's quite demanding. And its aims are to develop the person, maximize their potential, create really great results, but it's not about giving information. So it is about learning, but it isn't about instruction. It is about discovering, and it isn't about teaching. It is supporting or supportive, but it isn't telling. And it is asking questions, and it isn't about giving answers. So you can see that it's quite different from teaching. There's learning going on, there's discovering, there's you as a coach being supportive, and you as a coach asking questions. But contrary to teaching, there isn't any instruction, there isn't any teaching or any telling or giving answers. So you might say to yourself, well, what is there then? And what the coach does is ask questions which encourage the learner to think. And in that way, the coaching process encourages awareness, insights, and it encourages the learner to take more responsibility for the learning outcome. And not just to be more responsible, but to actually to be accountable for getting stuff done. And if you remember, I said that its focus is also on encouraging thinking, creative thinking, deep thinking, allowing time for thinking. So you can see that sometimes some of our classes are zap, 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 and they're quite pacey, and students like that. If you're going to do any kind of a coaching activity, you need to allow people to do a bit of thinking. So that's something that's different as well. So I hope you've now got a bit of a clearer idea about what coaching is. And now we can go on to thinking about how it can come into teaching. And what I promised to do for webinar 1 is look at motivation. Because, as I said in my invitation, I bet all of you have heard about life coaching. And maybe you know some people who've actually had life coaching, or maybe you've hired a life coach yourself. But some people are quite hazy about what actually goes on in those kind of conversations. But my sense is that one of the easiest ways to add coaching into your teaching is to use it to increase motivation of the students. So here I'm just going to talk about a few ideas where coaching can be used as a motivating element. And one of the things is that the one-to-one conversation itself is so important. I'm actually starting from the bottom of the slide here, as you'll see, during training. One-to-one conversations. Coaching is normally done in a one-to-one situation, although some of the techniques can also be used for groups, as I will perhaps come back to. But if you think about the one-to-one conversation, how useful that can be for motivation. One of the statistics that we have about coaching is that coaching after training increases learning by over 300%. And that is such a useful statistic. In business English, people often used to come to Oxford for a 2-week or a 3-week or even a 1-week course. Now, I know that some of you teach business clients on a long-term basis and you're seeing them every week for years. But if you think about a short-term course, a course of 2 weeks, and then the person just goes back to their own country and the work and the emails that they haven't dealt with, all that just hits them in the face. And then if they don't use the skills that they learnt with you, if they don't use the English that they learnt with you, they'll lose a lot of it straight away. And if they weren't very good when they came to you, but they made some progress, but it's going to rely on consolidation and using their English and doing more and finding opportunities to practice, etc. If they don't do that in their own country, then they're going to lose an awful lot of the benefit of the course. So a one-to-one conversation after the course is extremely beneficial. And do you know, I think that 300% statistic that they have, I think that's honestly based on 2 or possibly even only 1 coaching conversation after a training course. So think how much more benefit you'd get if you had 2 or 3 coaching sessions after a training course. So that's something to bear in mind. If you ever do any short-term courses, it might be something that your organization could offer, or if you are offering to if you're teaching business people and you sometimes do a seminar, maybe a weekend seminar or a 2-day seminar or a 3-day seminar, if you add into it a couple of one-to-one calls afterwards, you'll be providing your clients with the possibility of getting 300% more learning from that package that they're buying from you. So that's one thing for those of you who are freelancing and offering your own seminar packages to people. But those of you who perhaps are working in a language school and you see people day after day after day, well, not day after day, possibly week after week for many, many months, I think the during the course one-to-one conversation would be very good. So if you think of it as like coaching, you're doing, instead of doing a one-to-one conversation after the course, you're doing it at various points during the course. So maybe once a month or once every 2 months, you have a one-to-one conversation with each of the people in the class. Obviously, you'd have to work out the timetable quite well. But I used to do this when I was a business English teacher. I used to give each person 15 minutes. And they were extremely appreciative of this time, although they knew that because I was seeing one of each of them one by one. The rest of the time they would be working on their own because I couldn't be in two places at once. They were extremely appreciative of these. I called them tutorials at the time because I wasn't using coaching skills, so I called them tutorials. So I think that one-to-one kind of conversation, asking about progress, asking again what is going well, what they particularly like, what they feel is not going so well, and how they think they could make a difference to that. Those kind of conversations move from being a tutorial to being more coaching-like because you're asking questions rather than giving advice. So the questions might be, if you want to write them down, so how do you think you've done in the course over the last X lessons? What do you think you've improved in that time? And what do you think, so what are you, another question might be, so what are you pleased with about your about your progress in the last few weeks? And then you might go on to, so what are you less pleased with as regards your progress? And then a question might be, what do you think you could do to make that area better? And what do you think I could do to help you make that better? Or who else could be helpful here? And those are the kind of coaching questions that we ask to help the learner to do the thinking and come up with the answers that are going to suit them. Now, I found at the beginning of these conversations, if I was doing them while still teaching those people, they always wanted to know my feedback first. So how do you think I'm doing? So I think you might come up against that same slight barrier. Well, there's two ways I think you can deal with it. Either you can say, well, what I think is this, and then go on to the what do you think side. Or if you were going to be more coach-like, you could actually say, well, let me ask you first what you feel about things, and then I promise I'll tell you what I think at the end. And that way you perhaps encourage the person to think more independently about what they actually think. One of the things that I have found as a coach and as a coach trainer, training people in coaching skills, is that it's very difficult for teachers to listen like a coach. And when I was a teacher, I think I was the same, and I'm often the same now, if I'm honest with you. We tend, when we're being teachers, we're being the problem solver. So as we listen to somebody talking about something that isn't going well or could be going better, we tend to start thinking about solutions and advice in our heads. And so the result is we're only half listening to them, aren't we? And we're also assuming that our solutions are better than anything they can come up with. Well, those are two things that I have to not do when I'm coaching. And that's two things that I teach people to not do when they're coaching. So when I'm coaching, I listen with a mindset that is, this person is going to come up with a good solution for themselves. So I have that belief in the learner, and I listen. I really listen because I'm interested in what they come up with, and I trust and believe that they're going to come up with something good. So it's quite a different kind of listening. It's a much more 100% kind of listening, and the belief in the learner's potential to come up with really good ideas is so different from my mindset when I'm a teacher. So that's a little bit about one-to-one conversations. Now we're coming up to the half-hour mark, and so let's move on to do before training and after training. Before training, I think it's very useful to talk about goals with learners. So you probably already ask people, what are your aims on this course? But we do, as a coach, we do a little bit more on goals than just saying, so what's your goal with this course? We tend to go into it a bit more in a bit more detail. We might ask questions like, after they've answered that one, we might say, so what exactly do you want to be different when you leave? And when you go back into your workplace, what will you be doing differently when you leave here if this course has been really successful? What will other people be saying, and what will you be feeling? So that there's more thinking about the whole atmosphere around the goal situation. And it's a good idea to think about long-term goals and mid-term ones and immediate ones. So the immediate one might be, I don't know, to get some certain aspect of the learning done, and the medium one might be to feel more confident when I'm talking in a meeting, and the long-term one might be to be one of the most respected people in the company, and a vice president, and working in Brazil, Argentina, and I don't know, other places in Latin America. So so the goals could be different. So there are different questions you can ask there. And the reason for having the different goals is that you can, within the conversation, one-to-one conversation around the goals, means that you can really dig in there and find out what makes their eyes shine, what really is motivating for them. And then that's something that you can refer back to when motivation goes down. So you can talk about, so when you're in that meeting and people are looking at you and thinking, wow, what a good presentation, you can use that scenario that they've shared with you when they were talking about their medium-term goal to help in motivating them in the training that you're doing. So that's one of the things that you can do usefully, and we find very useful in our training courses to do that too. And the wheels, I know that some of you have seen my wheel. Here's one of them. You can use a wheel at the beginning, before training, to look at where people think they are, where their skills are in all of these different areas. So at the beginning of training, they might evaluate their pronunciation as being a 2, and their prepositions as being a 10, because they don't realize how many mistakes they make or whatever it is. So this is an evaluation wheel that can be used at any point. So that's quite a useful thing to use at the beginning, before training, for evaluation. Always important to date the wheel, remember, because you might want to use it again to go back to it and say, oh my goodness, a month ago that's what you thought about your pronunciation, and look where you've put it now. And of course, as a teacher, if you're doing one-to-one teaching, you can have your own version of the wheel and you can do a rating, and then you could have a conversation about the difference. So what differences do you see between my rating of your English and yours? What do you think makes me put mine higher than yours? What aspects of your pronunciation could make me say that you're a 5 when you think you're a 2? So that could be quite an interesting conversation if the person is reasonably good at English. Of course, if you've got people who are lower intermediate, you're not going to be able to have that kind of sophisticated conversation. But you might be able to find a way of getting some juice out of that wheel. You might also be able to use it to have a conversation about which is your favorite, even if you don't want to get into the evaluation. Then after training, we've talked a bit about after training already with the action plans that you can find out about after a short training course. Pluses and minuses, you also might want to talk about, that's to remind you to talk about what's gone well since you left us, for instance, or if you know, this seminar, the idea of the short seminar, and then you have the couple of calls afterwards, coaching type calls. So what's gone well since the course? What have you managed to do in your action plan? What have people said that was positive? What are you feeling that's better than before the seminar? And you also might want to ask on the minus side, so what are you less pleased with? Or what is there still left to do? And of course you would adapt the language to the level of the people that you're talking to. So that's a little bit about what you can do for motivation before the training, after the training, and during the training. And I really look forward to hearing more about your thoughts on these subjects that I've talked about after the call by your emails. So that's the language evaluation wheel. And now just to tell you about the next webinar. The next webinar is going to be on a Thursday. I thought it would be useful to try different days for each of these webinars so that those of you who are teaching on one day can come on one of the other days. And the last one will be on a Wednesday. So we'll have tried a Monday, a Thursday and a Wednesday. And please do tell me in your emails which days are particularly good for you or which are bad for you. We'll keep the timing the same, so it will be 5:30 UK time for all of them. And again, you can give me some feedback on the times and how good that is for you. Now you'll notice that the webinar 2 is just next week and webinar 3 is quite a long way away. So, well, the reason for this is that I want to give you a chance, those of you who are not really sure whether coaching has got anything to add to your teaching, I want to give you the chance in the first 2 webinars to really get a sense of what the possibilities are there, because we are running a coaching skills training later on in July, and so it will give you, I hope, those of you who are not sure whether coaching is for you, give you a chance to see over this webinar and the next one whether it is something for you, and then if it is, you might want to come along to the July course. If you want information on it, just tell me in your email. And then webinar 3 will be after the July course, the 2-day introduction to coaching skills. So I'll be able to tell you how it went. I'll be able to give you some quotes from the participants on it, to tell you what you missed and tell you what they thought of it, and so that will give a different kind of angle to the 3rd webinar. So there you are. We've spent just 35 minutes, and I hope you found that useful. Please give me your feedback by email, and I'm going to say goodbye now and have a very good evening.